All right, welcome back to Terp Trends and part 2 of my conversation with my dude Jimmy Lane. In the first part, we covered Jimmy's start in the cannabis industry, his time at Terravida Dispensary in Pennsylvania, and his transition from management to the buyer role. Today we're picking up where we left off, diving into Jimmy's journey as he expanded his career into West Virginia and Illinois. We'll hear about the challenges and the success stories of opening the dispensaries in the new markets, his work in creating an infusion facility, and the thoughts on where the cannabis industry is headed. This is Terp Trends. Let's dive in. Unfortunately, episode 1 is more of us just kept catching up, which I think we both enjoyed
good,
too
man.
much, which I enjoyed.
Exactly. Me too.
We may have to do a third one. I don't know. We'll see
It's
how
all
this one
good.
goes.
It's all good. I'm down. Like
Luckily,
I said, I'm down, man.
neither of us have a timeline, so it'll just be the Adam and Jimmy Chronicles, and we'll just keep it going.
I love it. I love it.
So we kind of left off. We talked about your past, man. We talked about you playing ball, getting into cannabis, and I think it'd be cool to kind of now dig into. You're back in the PA. You were working the retail space, with the management, and then you got the opportunity to transition to the space you kind of wanted to, So now you're in the buying atmosphere.
Yeah.
And so what was that like initially getting into it? Because it's a whole new realm now, right?
For sure. And I think it was cool for me, man, because even though that is a role that I always wanted to be in, um, it was still something that was new to me. So even though I had previous experience in like retail, corporate, and product development, I never really got so much into the actual corporate buying or merchandising piece of it. Me coming into buying, it was more so about I'm a product guy. So in terms of when I was approaching buying, it was more about um like finding quality, understanding what quality is, having an eye for quality, I guess you could say,
Mm-hmm.
and also understanding what people want. So I think that helped me a lot, not being so rigid in my process to start.
Yeah.
I think that helped me to put the products first, in terms of because when you once you get into the process of buying, obviously you have to consider, how is something selling, what is the price, what do I have to sell it for, what can I buy it for, etc. But when you start from a place of I want our store or my store to sell a quality product at a what I would call a reasonable price, because obviously higher quality is going to demand a higher price.
Yeah.
Um, that's I think when you approach it from that aspect, as opposed to just coming in and looking at it like just from a price only standpoint, I think it helps. I think it
Yeah.
helps.
I think too, you having that experience, like I kind of explain it like front of house is retail, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So you having that experience already with the patients and hearing what they're into, what's working, what's not, because there's a lot of trial and error in Pennsylvania. Do you think
Man.
that trial and error transition to definitely like learning the buying data on like who's doing what, you know?
So what I'll
Because it's
say
all
is,
fresh. Like you don't have
right,
anything to look at. You don't have past years. You don't have past data to look at like you would in retail.
right,
Um,
exactly,
so
exactly. So you're kind of going out on a limb with a lot of things, but I do think, um, like you said, being at the front of the house helped big time, and that was real important for me, even once I was buying, uh, because a lot of the times, like where my office was, it wasn't necessarily in the store. But still being in the stores as much as possible was key, because there's ins there's a bit of a disconnect, I feel, between that in store and the buyer a lot of times, if that buyer
hmm
doesn't have that experience, because
yeah,
because when you're in store, you're seeing a lot of things anecdotally, and you're
yeah,
like, and two, you're just one person in a store out of five or six people. So you're seeing a lot of things anecdotally, and it may just happen that on a certain day, all the patients or customers that you talk to, a certain thing is what they want, or it could be a certain time of year where a certain thing is going on. But I think what it allowed me to do was to be in the store and get those anecdotes, and then I could take those anecdotes and run them against actual data numbers to be
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a real sticky, and this anecdote right here is sticky in the numbers, which that's like batting a thousand. So it's like,
Yeah.
if I have, I could have something that looks good in numbers, but it could be that there's something going on in the store that's causing those numbers to be a certain thing. And if I'm not in the store, I don't know what that is, and vice versa. If I'm in the store,
Yeah.
I could be dealing with patients all day, and this is just one thing that I'm experiencing, but I'm the only person in the store experiencing that. Everybody else is having a different experience, so it doesn't translate into the number. So I think that's the key way of matching that up, is just understanding those flows, and it really helps you see what's real and what's not. So
Yeah.
it's 100% like crazy important to have that information. And even I know in these days and times, with the PA market being what it is, if you're a buyer in this market and you're not able to be in stores, I think you still have to be in contact with you have to have a good relationship with the people who are in the stores, because um there needs to be a feedback loop of what
Yeah.
you're seeing, what they're seeing, and where those are lining up, and how you can be successful.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of like, I was chilling with a homie and he's a buyer and he was kind of breaking down what it all was. And in my head, I'm just like, yeah, dude, that's like back in the day, you know, you get something in and you see what people are saying and then the word comes back to you. You know what I mean? And then you're like, I can either go to them again and grab that or no, that shit was trash. I need to go reallocate what I'm doing. Um,
Exactly,
and it's
exactly.
crazy how like that just translates to the same thing,
Yeah,
like it's
it's
universal.
exactly the
It's
same thing. It's exactly the
um
same, which is great, because I realized this the more and more I got into buying. And two, I think it's a function of the industry, because a lot of the tools and the data aggregation that you would use in a traditional buying setting,
yeah,
we're not able to use those same tools in the industry, just because of the technology that we're limited to.
yeah,
But I think, like me, I was very raw in my processes. Like, if you were to put me in a traditional buying setting, like, don't get me wrong, I could adapt and learn to use those tools, and but like, I don't speak necessarily merchandising lingo. I don't
yeah,
I'm not a traditional, just when you put me in one of those traditional settings,
yeah.
until somebody sees me actually implement the skills that I have, they may be like, man, this dude
Hmm.
is not really, is he able to do the job, because it's so non-traditional.
Yeah,
But like you said, because I think, and that's another thing that I love about buying, is like, it's one of those things where, there's a lot of the truth is in the products. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like, is you if you'll be able to tell if you're a good buyer or not, based on how much inventory you have left on the shelf at the end of the month, or at the end of the, whatever your time periods are. So
I got you. So that's a
so
way
it's
to
like,
measure that metric is to see
exactly,
what's clearing out
exactly.
and what SKUs are still left on the shelf, pretty much, right?
Yeah, because there's so many factors that play a part in that.
Yeah,
So if you're a good buyer, no matter whether it's the traditional sense or in a more raw sense, I think that's really the ultimate determination of, are you a good buyer, is at the end of the day, um, the products that you're buying, are they moving off the shelf? And how is that affecting, the business? Are you able to run your business effectively
yeah.
doing that?
Are you making it money?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And being able to tap into data, I feel like in this day and age, like the more I'm talking to cultivators and other business owners, it's
Key.
funny how they're like, yo, like I would think uh that this strain would kill it. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
my favorites. And then I
Yep.
put it out in the market and like it's complete
Yep.
different. And then it's
Exactly.
like now you're okay, let's revamp again. And
Exactly.
back to the drawing board. And I think that that definitely has to be a difficult thing with
It's tough,
buying
man.
and then seeing, how's the public taking it, how the patient's enjoying it.
It's
Um,
tough. It's tough, man. Especially like I know we were talking in our last session about how focused we are on quality, and I think that's the thing
yeah,
um with a lot of producers is that most of the time, if you're running a good operation, your producers are gonna know what quality is, and they're gonna want to consistently produce quality.
yeah,
But when you look at the market and you're in the market, like we said, in the stores, and you're looking at the numbers, quality is not what's moving the needle in terms of if you're a buyer. So, and the thing is, like,
not
again,
all the
because
time. Yeah,
not all the time, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it is, but like the, I mean, but that's the thing about quality, though. Like, quality in itself is a niche. Like when
yeah,
you think about what the higher end products are, and what
hmm,
quality, like we said, costs money.
yeah,
And when you're selling something that costs a significant amount of money, more times than not, you're going to sell less of it.
yeah,
So you have to make a determination in terms of you as a buyer, or you as a brand, you as a store, whatever it is. Am I going to focus on high end and be comfortable selling less products at a higher price, or am I going to focus on, moving things faster at a lower price, and, in that sense, having a lower quality? So those things have to all line up in terms of when you're thinking about what your buying process is. You have to have a good idea of, what type of business am I running? Do I want to run? When you're making all those decisions. So it's, all that goes into the thought process of a buyer, which is why, when you come into an organization, you have to have a good understanding of, number one, who that organization's consumer are. What is that consumer used to getting from that brand? Is it working? If it's working, let's keep doing that. If it's not
yeah.
working, let's figure out, something different that we could do. So, um, and yeah, it's crazy, man, because like talking about the data, when I was buying, um, like I was having to take information that was in MJ Freeway to a certain extent,
Yeah.
but it wasn't organized in a way that could be informative. So I was having to I was having to take data out of that information
Yeah.
system, rearrange it, and filter through a bunch of stuff, and I would present that to some of our partners and be like, hey, like it was simple stuff to me, but it was like, hey, these are all the cart strains that you have in our stores, and this is
Yeah.
how much they're moving on an average day. On the You can expect to sell this many of these on an average day, and then
Yeah.
that would inform them in terms of, okay, where do I need to focus my production? So it takes a lot of the individual bias out of it when you have that data.
It's one thing I love about data. There's no emotion to it.
Exactly.
It's just like
Exactly.
this
It
is
just
what
is
it
what it
is.
is.
Yep.
It is what
So
it is.
reflect on it and figure it out.
Yep.
Sometimes we need that. That's important. Yeah, so data, talk about data. Little plug here. If you haven't yet, go download Waddle, the Waddle app.
Ah, man.
And that is real time data. So that's going to be batch specific. All you do is get your product from the medical dispensaries in Pennsylvania and you just scan it into your journal. And basically, it's going to pick up all the batches. You're going to do a light review, score it, star it, and then you can see what your peers are reviewing and what they're saying as well. There's also maps, so you can get down with smoke shops, and there's a lot of really cool stuff on the way. So that's
Yeah, man.
Waddle,
A lot of good features on that
WODL.
app. A lot of good features
Yeah,
on that app, man. And some even cooler stuff coming from what I hear. That's exciting, man. That's exciting. That's
yeah,
because I mean you get that amongst your friends, but you don't get that from such a wide group of people in terms
yeah,
of
and
feedback
it's
on.
honest. It's not
Exactly.
bought. They're not bought reviews. It's honest,
Exactly.
pure reviews, not a bot. We live in a world of bots right now, so it's not a
Exactly.
bot.
And if I'm not mistaken, it like breaks it down to the batch, right? To the individual batch, which is
Individual
important.
batch. Yeah,
Which is important.
each single batch breaks down all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes. They can take pictures of it too, so you can see it. I use it for rosin and PA.
Mm.
Um, in the spare thing in the and the thing, they were maybe Standard Farms may have something else, or to see what's going on against them. But right now, I just use it for the rosin to see what people are saying and to see what it looks like. That's
Yeah,
the coolest thing to me,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. You can see
Nice.
before you buy, which is not a thing.
Yeah,
That's the only way.
it's
That's the
brutal.
only way.
It's brutal. So Jimmy, you're transitioning. You're in PA. You're being a buyer. And then we're obviously things happen with Terravida as all cannabis companies kind of reach their pivot moment. Um, After that, where'd you see yourself?
So, okay, so uh, for those who don't know, Terravita was sold to Verano in, I guess it was around summer of 21, is when it
Yeah.
became official. And I stayed on with Verano for a little while after that, probably I guess until maybe like almost the end of that year almost.
And
Um,
did they have other stores, or did they just come into PA and acquire the three locations?
so I believe now don't you might want to fact check me on this, but if I'm not mistaken, Verano already had a license with three locations.
Oh, cool.
And then they added Terravita's actually, so Terravita had three active locations at the time, and
Yeah.
then I believe the Terravita group had an additional three stores under a different license.
Wow. Cool.
Um, and then they also at the same time, Verano that is, uh, had a deal with the Healing Center,
Nice.
um, which and then
That was like in Pittsburgh, right? I
right, it was on
believe.
the western in the western side of the state.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, they had dispensaries and they had one of the research licenses too, I believe, tied up in that.
Oh, wow.
And then also all at that time, Verano acquired Agrikind as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a big that was a big change.
That was a big grab in
Um,
PA,
yeah, it was a big grab,
which
big
isn't
change.
uncommon. A lot of these states are opening up with licenses, and bigger companies are just coming in and buying them. You know, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, and I think specifically in PA, specifically at that time, that was something that was happening with a lot of groups. Like that was not uncommon in terms of what was going on. I would say from like 2021 probably up through recent times is like it was a
Yeah.
and I'm sure people know it was kind of a consolidation of things
Yeah.
here in PA. And so it was definitely a transition, man. Um it was interesting because so some of the differences um at that time we were me and a couple other people were handling the buying for all of the Terravita locations.
Yeah.
But looking at Verano's operations, and I want to say the healing center kind of did it like we did, but at that time,
I
and
heard they were like the Terravita of like the Pittsburgh area, like when
yeah,
they
yeah, that
opened
was
up
what
and
I
how
was
they
hearing
ran
too at the
everything,
time. Like, yeah,
which is
exactly.
really
I
cool.
I
Really
was
cool.
hearing, yeah, similar things, and the people that I met from the healing center that I worked with, super cool. Definitely on a similar page, and I think had a similar approach uh
Awesome.
to the buying that we did.
This episode is brought to you by Waddle, the world's fastest and easiest way to review and track your medicinal cannabis products. Waddle offers batch-specific reviews, so you'll know what to stash or what to trash. It's exclusively available for Pennsylvania medical cannabis patients. Waddle helps you take the guesswork out of your cannabis journey and ensures transparency with the verified product tracking. Download Waddle now on iOS or Android. That's WODL. And take control of your cannabis experience today.
And then Verano, and I think this was probably a function of them being a multi-state operator.
Yeah.
Um, it
Okay, so that's what I was curious about is how big was Verano when they
so
came in?
when they came in, I'm not for sure how many states they were operating in, but I remember distinctly because I'm a visual guy.
Yeah.
They had these T-shirts and it had like all the states that they were operating in on the back, and I want to
Word.
say at that time. it was somewhere between 10 and 15 states.
Oh
This was in
wow.
20, this was in
Yeah.
21. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
If I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is all loose, man. So,
But yeah, so I think as a function of that, they did have somebody who was in there. I think they're headquartered in Illinois.
Yeah.
They had like somebody who kind of oversaw the buying, but in terms of who was reaching out to the producers, placing orders, et cetera, et cetera, I think they were doing it on a store by store basis
Yeah.
based on who that store manager was.
I got you.
So that was it was an interesting and what happened as a result of that merger, um, they were transitioning those stores to where all of that buying was going to be centralized
Nice.
amongst a statewide
Yeah.
merchandising group. And so I think that
But
was a bit of a transition for
yeah.
sure. Like
Oh yeah.
if you're running your store and I I totally get this. If you're running your store and you're developing relationships with cultivators and you're have a certain buying process that you're adhering
Yeah.
um, to have someone that's an hour, 2 hours away now kind of saying, okay, kind of putting in the strategy and the plan in terms of what we're going to buy, who we're going to buy from, um, different things like that. It can be, difficult to make that change. And then
Yeah.
two, at the same time that that was a transition for them, the way that we approached what we were going to buy, uh, from my standpoint at Terravita, Verano had a different way that they approached buying as well, just based on because they were a multi-state operator and because
Yeah. Whole
um,
different probably philosophy to it with just the bulkness that they have to deal with, you know what I mean?
different philosophy, different considerations, and two, a big distinction when you're buying. And I think regulations have a lot to do with this, specifically the tax code. But
Mm.
two, you're going from a independent operating dispensary without that's not vertical to a
Yeah.
vertical operation.
Uh
So now you have to consider that vertical piece, which totally changes, the assortment that you're going to have in your store. So when I'm a buyer, I'm looking at the assortments that I have in my stores and the way that I usually break that assortment up into percentages into by brand and by product category, et cetera.
yeah.
I'd be like, okay, our assortment is this percentage of, we'll just, say Cresco, this percentage of Rhythm, this percentage of Standard Farm, this percentage of, whoever the cultivator was. Um, but when you turn into a vertical operation, obviously you want to have your own products in the store.
Yeah.
So those assortment percentages start to change drastically.
I get you.
And so that takes it to from my standpoint, and I don't want to say what's right and what's wrong,
Yeah.
but from my perspective, the way that I was focused on buying. I was focused on the consumer. What does the consumer want? What am I going to be able to move at a decent pace throughout the store and
Yeah.
achieve the goals of us as a store and also make the consumers happy? Where once you get vertical, you have the added consideration of, hey, I have this product coming out of my cultivation and I need to make sure move. So that becomes my first priority
Yeah.
is moving the products from my cultivation. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could take those other things into consideration in order to do that but it goes beyond the store into the cultivation. You might have to make some, and those changes are much harder to make at the production level than they are at the retail level for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Oh yeah.
so so it's harder to cater to your patient or your customer from a producer perspective than it was much easier to cater to our consumers from a
Yeah.
retail perspective than it was once you add that production piece.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother game. And
Yeah,
that timeline of like just the feedback and the data you have to collect to then give it back to the production team and the cultivating, like to
exactly.
just It's
and
like,
then it
oh
take
well, that didn't do well, and we just
right.
harvested. So what are we gonna do? Like, guess turn it into
Exactly.
edibles.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is when you're a producer, you get that feedback, but you can't implement the changes that you're getting from that feedback for
Yeah,
6 months.
yeah,
And by that time the feedback may be totally different.
100%.
Somebody so it's yeah, it definitely adds a big piece to that puzzle for sure.
Yeah, and just chasing what constantly what the consumers want. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, you have to battle that theory. Obviously, yeah, the consumer's right, but are they right?
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
but you still got to buy according to that. And you're just like, man,
Well, you would think.
this
You would
OG
think that
should be
you have
doing
to.
better, man.
Well, and two, I mean, sometimes, we talk about previously we were talking about, understanding quality, and quality isn't necessarily what's moving the market.
Yeah,
But sometimes it's a case of it's not that you're putting out such high quality, it's just that um you you just aren't giving the consumer what you're not able to meet the consumer's needs as good as, this other cultivator over here,
yeah,
who because you think about somebody like Rhythm or GTI,
yeah,
they were vertical from the beginning.
yeah,
So they started their operations with that in mind, and they had a kind of a jump on those groups like Verano or people who acquired that to become vertical.
yeah,
They kind of had to, there was a lot of adjusting that they had to do at the time where companies like GTI and Cresco, I think they had a few stores open at the time. They already had a good idea of what they wanted to do. They didn't have to change a lot because they already had the stores.
yeah.
Um, so so yeah, it makes it difficult, but yeah, so that was definitely an interesting experience seeing those differences in ways that different businesses were approaching buying.
Oh, yeah. Especially that
And
size, Jimmy. That's huge.
yeah,
Verano's, I
it
didn't know
was
Verano was that big.
yeah, man. Yeah,
So
I
that
think
that's
even
major.
today, I think today, if I'm not mistaken, they operate like 18 stores.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, which is a lot. I mean, and
Yeah.
uh, consumer perspectives differ greatly depending on where you are in the state.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
that's a lot for them to nail down. But yeah, so I was with them probably through the remainder of 2021, and then I transitioned back to the previous group that I was working with,
Yeah.
um, and
And
we
they
were
branched out into a new state at this point, right?
yeah, yeah. While
She
they
went
were
to Illinois, or I believe.
Yeah, so while they were operating in PA,
Yeah.
they were applying for licenses and had acquired some licenses um in West Virginia
Yeah.
and
Oh, wow.
Illinois as
Cool.
well.
Yeah.
Um, and then also there was a license that was acquired in Connecticut as well.
Oh,
Um,
word.
the licenses in West Virginia and Illinois were actually ones that made it to uh, actual fruition in terms of opening dispensaries in West Virginia and
Yeah.
opening a infuser production facility in Illinois.
Damn.
Um,
So
yeah,
you're doing some
so
traveling.
yeah. So
That's
at that
cool.
point, yeah, at that point I was definitely um in and out of PA probably every other week I was in a different state, whether it was West
Word.
Virginia
Yeah.
or Illinois. And it was very interesting, man. I got to see um the differences between what the consumption was in different states.
Yeah.
It was very different. It was very different, definitely from a dispensary perspective where in PA, I think people were, very hungry for the opportunity, and obviously the population makes a huge difference. That's a huge consideration from a retail perspective. Is how many people do you have to come into the store because the numbers and the quantity of product that we were moving in PA was drastically different than what was going on in West Virginia. And two, I think
Oh.
there's a and obviously, in PA we were in like Philly, which is not rural at all.
Yeah.
Where in West Virginia it's a lot more rural.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot more a
It's like
lot
my
more.
old neck of the woods where I used to live.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. And there was I think people had their consumption habits taken care of. Like I don't think they needed
I got you.
dispensaries, at least at that
Yeah.
time in West
So
Virginia.
when you guys were pulling into West Virginia, was it already happening there, or were you like scouting it out to figure out where we should be or what's going on? So was it like
So in terms
pre?
of the locations were already set because when you were applying for the licenses, you had to say specifically where you were going to open your stores at.
Ah, I gotcha.
So all that was done on the front end in terms of like looking at population centers and based on um demographic data that we saw going on in PA, like how can we find the best places in West Virginia to make
Yeah,
sure, we're setting ourselves up for success. Um and so that was already determined and we were one of, if not the first store to open in Huntington is where it was, Huntington, West
word.
Virginia, which is like for those who don't know, closer to PA, you have like Morgantown, which is like West Virginia University. And then down where we were in Huntington, it was that's where Marshall University is located.
I
So
gotcha.
kind of down near the border of, I think at that border it was like West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky were all like you could get to each state in like less than 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Um, but there just was no there was no people. There wasn't enough people to
yeah.
support the business. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it just was it the in terms because first of all, it's very hard to operate a profitable dispensary again based on regulations and taxation in the cannabis industry, period.
Yeah,
So when you're not able to move a decent amount of product at a a price that's above a certain margin, it just makes it very difficult to sustain a
whew.
business. So that was the
Yeah,
struggle. That was the struggle the whole time. And then two, there is as one store as one store, there's not enough population to support it. But then on top of that, there were maybe three or four other dispensary groups that opened up dispensaries in that same general
area.
vicinity.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, so it made it like they all
Even more
cannibalized.
competitive.
Yeah, made it can they cannibalized each other. It made it difficult for any of those stores to succeed. And then two, the product variety, obviously, because that market was just beginning. And two, they didn't have near as many cultivators online as what we had in PA at that point.
Yeah,
Um, they just weren't able to put the products in the market that consumers wanted
to
in a
boost it,
timely enough
basically.
manner. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So those stores just couldn't sustain,
Oh,
man. I
brutal.
think
Yeah. Are they still
um
running now, or did you guys just?
I'm not sure. I know
Yeah.
when I ultimately uh parted ways with that particular group. It was still operating at that time.
Oh wow.
But it was like hanging on
Treading
by a
water.
thread.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
treading water for sure. I mean, I hope that that's still going on because I think another big thing in West Virginia was there was a lot of resistance to because it was a medical program, a lot of resistance
Hmm.
to people getting their medical cards. Like there
Oh
was
really?
resistance in PA, but there was way more resistance in West Virginia. Like,
That's wild.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like the quantity of people with their medical cards was very, very
This.
suppressed, very low,
Wow. Yeah.
very low. So,
Brutal.
yeah, so it was tough. It was tough, and at the same time, while that was getting off the ground. Um, I was also spending a lot of time. I had to shift a lot of my focus to Illinois,
Yeah.
which was a totally different ball game because I'm transitioning from operating and handling purchasing for a retail operation to uh, looking at the operations and building brands for a from a production standpoint.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's totally different. Made me it honestly honestly it made me appreciate the simplicity of retail. Like I thought
Yeah.
retail was crazy tough,
Yeah.
but yeah, handling those operations and just the quantity of things that can go wrong or at least not as planned in terms
Yeah.
of production um was was drastically greater in that production realm. So um but it was really good. I enjoyed it because there were pieces that I could take from, again, I'm a product guy.
Yeah.
So we're building the product assortment from the bottom up. So that was right up my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time at a lot of expos like MJ Biz and those type of places, finding
Yeah.
partners who had what we felt were quality products that we could bring to the Illinois market. Did a lot of market research in terms of understanding what the products were in the Illinois market before we got there. So there were pieces of the production that were, up my wheelhouse as coming from the buyer's perspective in terms of that piece of it, and then developing relationships with those suppliers, and then starting to develop relationships with um, different dispensary groups that were in the area.
Yeah.
All of those were things that I could kind of draw on my previous experience from. But when it came to implementation of the production piece, that's where things got very challenging, and I had to do a lot of learning,
Yeah.
like on learning on the go, doing it really quickly. So from that perspective, it was real important for us as a group, and for me in particular, to make sure that the person that we were looking at to run that facility really had a handle on production, specifically because it was, again, an infused products manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
Somebody who had a lot of experience in consumer packaged goods, specifically food manufacturing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you got a bunch of considerations. Because we're building this. So I had to, us as a group, we had to find a location,
Yeah.
which was difficult because the zoning laws were a little bit different. And two, like at that point, all of the available real estate that was prime for what we were doing
Yeah.
was kind of
Difficult.
taken or hard to find. Um, and then once we found the facility, we had to, it essentially was a blank, empty space warehouse
Oh wow. Okay.
that
Yeah.
we
So you had to
had to
canvas all
actually
of it.
build from the ground up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
luckily there was a group that we were working with out of Colorado. I'm not gonna get into
Oh
any
yeah. No
names with that,
worries.
but that had some infuser facility experience, who was able to impart some of their wisdom for me, which was very helpful in kind of getting an understanding of how we needed to lay the facility out.
Yeah.
Also got some perspective on that from both our product partners, the people that we were working with for like a bunch of our ingredients and different things like that,
Yeah.
who were working with other infuser facilities in other states, and then also obviously from our um our production director, who previously worked for like crazy. So I didn't know this when I got there, but Illinois is like one of the major food production hubs in the
Oh
US.
snap. Really?
Yeah, so he was
Never
like
would have thought that.
I had no clue. I had no clue, but it definitely, I guess because it's like a centrally located place where you can get to a
To
bunch of different
support.
places in the states pretty, and based on wherever else it would be located at a reasonable time.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he was handling like major large scale food production. And so he had a good idea of like what we needed to take into consideration in terms of the health department. Like, how are we going to
Oh
pass all of
yeah.
those
Oh yeah.
regulations, and then like building codes and all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of stuff that I didn't have experience with, that I was glad to be
Wow.
able to team up with him and kind of, so we could, take those things on together. And he was super helpful in helping us achieve that. So that was probably like the whole process from finding the building to actually getting to a place where we were operational. I feel pretty glad to say it was probably a year process.
Yeah.
Um, and the build out itself probably took about 6 months or so before we became operational.
Wow.
But that was probably one of the most challenging things that I've done in my professional career. It's very,
Oh yeah.
very taxing because not only was it something that was totally new, that I had to learn on the go, but then also we were doing it as a company. before when we were operating the retail locations, we had the backing of an investor.
Yeah.
At this point, the investors were out of the picture. All of the money was coming from the owner. And
Yeah.
so, needless to say, it was not near as much money as they
What you
had to
needed. Yeah.
throw around when in the retail operations. And so, and then two, time was a factor. So that was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that if you don't have a lot of money, you cannot be trying to move fast. Like that, those two things
No.
don't go together. At least if you want
No.
it to be um long term successful. That was probably some of the biggest challenges and biggest hurdles that we ran into because we were trying to move at a fast pace. But if you want to do something in a quality way and move at a fast pace, you have to have a lot of money to throw at it.
Yeah.
Which we did not have. So that was definitely, that added some challenges in there. But we got it done. We got it done. And it was definitely uh an experience that I appreciate now
Phew.
because yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely definitely an experience that I'm glad to have under my belt. Because I think it, prepared me for some stuff that is hopefully, to come in the future. And um, I was just glad to be able to say that we accomplished that, and I think it was a big deal for a lot of people that were a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you got experience now with finding locations and dealing with building codes and stuff like that, which I think at
Exactly.
East Coast, we may need to
Yeah.
find a location to start throwing some.
Right, exactly. It's definitely happening. It's definitely happening where we are. So yeah, it was a great experience, man. And as taxing as it was, less physically, more so emotionally.
Oh, yeah, man. It's a
It
lot.
was, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was a great experience, man. I think it was very valuable for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in my head, as you're saying all these things, I'm just imagining, I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know you took on this big of a beast. Like I knew you were getting your hands full with transitioning in other realms, but now being able to talk to you and hear about it, I'm just like, whoa.
It was crazy.
Knowing other details of stuff, you know what I mean? I'm just like, damn, Jimmy, you're out here right now. Check out brownbagfarmgoods.com, an online seed bank that specializes in hash strains, land-raised hybrids, and a wide variety of top breeders, including MTS Farms, Top Dog Seeds, Bloom Seed Co., and dozens more. Free shipping on all U.S. orders and international shipping is available as well. Brown Bag Farm Goods. Grow the seeds that will grow you. That's
Yeah, it
what's
was
up.
crazy, man. It was crazy. And two, what else it made me do because I think I had some clue, but I didn't know fully. And I already had great respect for this dude, but I think in our first session we talked about Josh.
Yeah.
Um, the way that he was able to help them build Terravida, it
Yeah.
gave me a lot. Even the respect that I had, which I thought couldn't be more respect for him than I had, it made
Yeah.
me have even more respect for that guy. Like, whew.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Because I know he had done that type of thing in Denver
Yeah.
before with the Walking
Yeah.
Raven. Like
Oh,
he was a
yeah.
big part of just the infrastructure piece. Like it's one thing to come into a situation where the infrastructure and the foundation is kind of already laid, and then
Mhm.
you just play your part. But to
Mhm.
take it on to where you are part of building the foundation and the infrastructure, that's it's
Yeah.
it's it's a task, man. So to
Yeah.
anybody out there doing that,
Yeah.
kudos for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and shout out to Josh, man. That's a good dude right there.
Great
You
dude.
know.
Great. Love
You
that
know.
guy.
Yeah, that's a good dude right there. Hell yeah. So Jimmy, man, you got your hands in all different markets. You're traveling. Obviously you tried some cannabis along the way. Was there any strains that kind of stuck out to you that you were smoking along the way? You're like, damn, I need to
Man.
talk to you. You know what I mean?
So to be honest, man, it's kind of
That's a hard
hard for
question. That's a hard
it is
question.
hard. It is hard. And primarily because shoot, after a while, I stopped even considering what the
Yeah.
strain was. I was just
Yeah.
like, I was more concerned with first the quality of the product, but then I'm looking at the terps and trying to see
Mhm.
exactly how the profile connects with me. Um, And so I really stopped focusing so much on what strain this is and what strain that is. I'm trying to think of any
Do you still practice that? Like these
oh,
days? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like I prefer you so I kind of approach it a couple different ways. So if I'm dealing with a product that has numbers attached to it,
Yeah.
I'll look at the terps. I don't
Yeah.
I don't even look at all at THC percentage. It's not even a consider. I mean, I may consider like does it have some minor cannabinoids in there too.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm not looking at THC percentage at all. Me personally, strains that I gravitate more towards is probably going to be either probably your OG varieties that are like heavy limonene and myrcene,
Hmm.
or you're more like what I would call like a cookie variety with the limonene and caryophyllene. Those are probably my
Yeah.
favorite profiles, I would say. And then
Yep.
too, anything honestly that's high limonene, I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no. So that's if I have numbers.
Yeah.
Um, if I and even when I do have numbers, I still want to like majority of the time if I'm going to like a legal whether it's rec or med. If I can't smell it, I'm like, I don't even need to go in there
Yep.
because I just can't trust it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'll just choose an alternative. So that's definitely a must is being able to smell it.
Yeah.
Um, but if I'm working with something that's a little bit more traditional, and I don't really have numbers, I'm first thing I'm doing is I'm smelling it,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get, what that profile is doing for me. And then two, I don't even much consider the visual aspect anymore that much, man, because some of the best stuff I smoked has looked like not that
Yeah.
great. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? The
Oh yeah.
visual quality hasn't necessarily is definitely at the bottom of my list in terms of
Well, there's
visual.
so many
S-
ways now to manipulate that I don't think
Exactly.
many consumers understand like what people can do in the garden to manipulate the appearance of these buds, the density of these buds. Um,
Exactly.
and some people are like, "Man, this thing's so rock solid. Like this thing's so dense." And I'm just like,
Right.
"Yeah, all right, man.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks
And
for
then
telling me that, man. I'm good on
right,
that."
all right,
You
I
know,
appreciate the
but if you
tidbit.
love that, if not, I'd love to talk to you about it, but enjoy it.
Right, right, yeah.
Like high THC percentages, like I know that's all people want. And when I see anything over like 30%, dude, I'm just like, no,
Right, because you
I don't even want, I don't think that, I think you're playing and your variants, you play your highest variants, which
exactly.
I was in the testing realm. I understand what that's like to have to do that. Um,
Exactly. And if it is a real number, what are you sacrificing to get that
yeah,
THC in
you
terms of
know,
where the quality actually comes from? And it's funny, I'm always hoping that things transition in the market, man, but I was talking to our friend who was still a buyer in the space and he was like, "Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's distillate and high THC is still running the game."
yeah, yeah, that's it. I
Out
mean,
here.
no offense to all the rosin. Like I know everyone's pushing to just get like live rosin. They want rosin, but what about water hash? What about like undisturbed trichomes? Like why?
Mhm.
Like let's play homage to the plant and
Yeah,
everything we've
man.
learned about it. Like let's just get true to the roots.
Yeah.
Let's stop messing with the THC and let's start making real hash.
Yeah,
You
man. I
know?
think that's the problem. Well, I don't want to say it's a problem, man, but that's the thing with the image of cannabis. Like what you see on Instagram, what you see on YouTube, like there's such a small community that still has a reverence and respect for that type of thing. Like
Yeah,
people who are just who aren't as fortunate enough to be connected to it in that way. People are who are just
yeah,
coming into it. They don't even know that that type of thing exists, and they think that a lot of times, I would say the majority of majority of consumers out here, I would say if you showed them some 5, 6 star water hash, they would think that it's not as quality as rosin, and it's like, but you don't understand that people are taking their lesser quality hash and turning it into rosin because it's not
yeah.
what you
It's
wanted it to be. So I think there's just a lack of understanding, which speaks for the need of you know, of shows like yours, and other sources that are educating people as to what is really quality out here.
Yeah,
So I think that's a big piece of it, man, and that's kind of what I like to do. That's why I love to, anybody who wants to talk about cannabis really at any time, I'm always down for it because the word needs to be spread in terms of what quality is, because that's really the only way that. And I
yeah.
don't know that it'll ever change, man. That's quality is always a niche, man. Any products that you look at, whether it's fashion, food, um, beer, whatever it
Yeah.
is, man, the quality is always a smaller part of the
Oh yeah.
overall market.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I
So
agree.
I'm coming to the realization that we just have to embrace it, man. We just have to embrace it and,
Oh yeah.
uh, welcome and try to bring as many people to that side as possible. But
Yeah.
just have an understanding. If you're operating in that realm, you're just doing it from a perspective of love, for
Yeah.
what you're doing, and just, it's a hard place to operate because it's difficult to be, especially if you're trying to run a
Well, the
business.
return, man, the return on it, and the
Yeah,
consumers don't understand it yet, so there's not gonna be a good return on it because just the knowledge and the education's not out there.
yeah,
Like I'd love to see the numbers now. I mean, obviously distillate flies off the shelf, but compared to like, what's the return on hydrocarbons compared to these live rosins that are out compared to like flour and edibles? Like
hmm,
I'm sure the concentrate, even the rosins are. Now there's a little more hype, but there's not a lot of companies that are pushing heady rosin out.
right,
Like what are these numbers still with concentrates compared to the traditional flour or
yeah,
edibles? You
yeah,
know, those are things I
hmm.
guess I have a question for my data man. You know,
Indeed,
he'll
indeed.
like
I'm
he'll
sure he
like
can get you
that
some.
one.
I was gonna say, I'm sure he can get you some numbers on that.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Well, I'm surprised we were able to get that done, a good amount done in 56 minutes. I'm proud of
Yeah,
both of
man.
us. You
Hey,
know,
likewise, likewise. But I will say, I mean, don't let that be a reason why we can't jump on here again at any time. And
oh
I'm always
no,
down to jump on with you.
no, so I think so a thing I'm gonna start introducing, and this is a loose idea, but I think it's fun to introduce it already, is something called Bud Talk, right?
Hmm.
So I want to start incorporating brands, and either they sponsor it and get involved with it, or
Yeah,
it's just they just deal with our raw data of what we're gonna do.
I like the raw data
Uh,
aspect. I like the raw
you know, you
because
know me,
me
me
because
too.
this is yeah, I know that this is what I was gonna say. Now know it now me personally knowing you, I know even if you were getting a sponsorship, that would not at all affect your position on
No,
on the product.
no, definitely wouldn't. It would
But I
excite me
think.
more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it gives you gives you a little steam. But I think from a public perspective, I think they would appreciate um, no sponsors. Like you said, just
Yes,
out here, just raw,
yes. But
uh 100% feedback loop.
get a couple homies, start selecting stuff from markets, and we all, either I do it blindly where no one else knows what the product or who it is,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's
Oh, now
blind.
that I like that too. That's a nice way
Only
to offset the
only
sponsorships.
I know who it is.
Yeah. No,
Um,
no. If you're testing it, you should do it where you don't, or whoever's testing it, they don't
yeah,
know. Yeah, that's a good
y-
way to offset the
you know,
sponsorships, though. I like
and
that. I
then
like that.
maybe it's two. I probably have to do 2 jars of a brand or 2 strains. I want to stick to hash just because
Hmm.
I'm not smoking a lot of flower these days because of the CHS shit. And
Yeah.
whatever, my own stuff. That's for another episode. But and just for timeline, because we're all gonna go on tangents about what we think of it. We all
Right,
try
right,
it,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, and we're all different heads with different we all look at cannabis quality differently. As similar as it
Hmm.
is, we're all people that understand quality, but
Individuals.
it would be cool for everyone in real time to break that down. And then at the
Yep.
end of the episode, we reveal jar number one was this, jar number two was this.
Yeah.
This is this person's brand. This is what they're doing. Blah blah blah.
I
But I
love
think
it.
it's a
I
way for
love
the
it.
people to start knowing this shit. One thing like being heady's really cool, but like there's so much hype that goes wrong, and like I just think false, not advertising, but just information out there around hype, where
For
it's
sure.
like I
For
don't
sure.
I'm not one that really. cares what you think of my opinion when it comes to that. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
down to just put it out there. You know what I mean?
100%. 100%. I got another idea too that
Ooh,
I got an idea for you, but I'm gonna keep it between us for now because it's very different. It's a very different idea, and I think
well,
your
I'm gonna end
perspective.
it right here then, real quick. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Jimmy Lane. He's gonna be back plenty of more times. Check out part one. This is the end of part two. So if you just tuned in for some reason at the end of part two, go back to part one.
Yeah, appreciate you, bud.